Yeah, all black everything. Welcome to the channel again. Once again, it's sharing that good information. We're doing something about your straw man. Go ahead, look it up, Google it, YouTube it, whatever your channel is. Go ahead and do your own research from that way. Go ahead, check out this channel. Y'all go ahead, man. Getting into it here. Like it, share it, subscribe it. If you dig the content, you're just going in a little bit. Piece of love, get into it. I do not own the rights to this music. I will see that's the king, God, Michael Jackson. Peace and love. Great inspiration. And we going in. I did some notes. This is from the, my own little search here. And it starts as Freedom of Information Act, or the FOIA. UCC 1 Uniform Commercial Take Back Your Straw Man. On April 5th, 1933, then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, under executive order issued April 5, 1933, declared, quote, all persons are required to deliver on or before May 1, 1933. All persons are, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank, branch, or agency, or to any member bank of the Federal Reserve System. James A. Farley, a postmaster general at the time, required each postmaster in the country to the post office. On the bottom of the posting was the following: criminal penalties for violation of executive order: $10,000 fine or 10-year imprisonment, or both, as provided in Section 9 of the order. Section 9 of the order reads as follows, quote, whosoever willfully violates any provisions of this executive order, of these regulations, or of any rule, regulation, or license issued thereunder may be fined not more than $10,000, or if a natural person may be imprisoned for not more than 10 years, or both. And any officer, director, or agency of any corporation who knowingly participates in any such violation may be punished by a lifetime imprisonment or both. End quote. Stated within a written document received September 17, 1997 from the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel, Office of the Deputy Assistant General Richard L. Schiffen, is in response to a Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, was the following, quote, a fact that is frequently overlooked is that the executive order and proclamations of the president normally have no direct effect upon private persons or their property, and instead normally constitute only directives or instructions to officers or employees of the federal government. The exception is those cases in which the president is expressly authorized to or required by laws enacted by the Congress to issue an executive order or proclamation dealing with legal rights or obligations of members of the public, such as issuance of selective service regulations. Okay, for sure, Pop. Excuse me. I have to get something straightened real quick. Okay, let me see. Such as an issuance of selective service regulations, establishment of boards to investigate certain labor disputes, and establishment of quotas or fees with respect to certain imports into this country. End quote. Note: It seems rather obvious that President Roosevelt was not expressly authorized or required to issue an executive order or proclamation demanding the public private to relinquish their privately held gold. The order proclamation issued by Roosevelt was an undisciplined act of treason. 2 months after the executive order, on June 5th, 1933, the Senate and the House of Representatives, 73rd Congress, first session at 4:30 p.m., approved House Joint Resolution, or HJR 192, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, joint resolution to assure uniform value to the coins and the currencies of the United States. HJR 192 states, in part, every provision contained in mold or made, with respect to any obligation which purports to give the obliged a right to require payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency or in any amount of money of the United States measured thereby is declared to be against public policy, and no such provision shall be contained in or made with respect to any obligation hereafter incurred. Every obligation heretofore or hereafter incurred, whether or not any such provision, is contained therein or made with respect thereto, shall be discharged upon payment, dollar for dollar, in any such coin or currency which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts. HJR 192 goes on to state, quote, as used in the resolution, the term obligation means an obligation including every obligation of and to the U.S. expecting currency payable in the money of the United States, and the term coin or currency means coin or currency of the United States, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of the Federal Reserve banks and national banking associations. HJR 192 supersedes public law. What passes as law today is only color of law. The Color of Law book too. I should have brought a book. Check out that book, Color of Law. I'll show you some good things in there too. Replacing it with public policy. This eliminated our ability to pay our debts, allowing only for their discharge. When we use any commercial paper, checks, drafts, warrants, Federal Reserve notes, etc., and accept it as money, we simply pass the unpaid debt attached to the paper onto others by way of our purchases and transactions. This unpaid debt under public policy now carries a public liability for its collection. In other words, all debt is now public. Say that one more time. Under public policy, let's see, go back. Let's finish the thought here. When we use commercial paper, checks, drafts, warrants, Federal Reserve notes, etc., accepted as money, we simply pass the unpaid debt attached to the paper to others by way of our purchases and transactions. This unpaid debt under public policy now carries a public liability collection for its a public liability for its collection. And in other words, all debt is now public. So we all owe. If they're going to say it, we all owe something. The U.S. government, in order to provide necessary goods and services, created a commercial bond or promissory note by pledging the property, labor, life, and body of its citizens as payment for the debt bankruptcy. This commercial bond made chattel or property out of every man, woman, and child in the America. We became nothing more than human resources and collateral for the debt. This was without our knowledge and our consent. How? It was done through the filing or registration of our birth certificate. Aha. How did they do it? Through the registration or the filing of our birth certificate. The government actually, the elected and appointed administrators of government took and still do to this day certified copies of all our birth certificates and placed them into the United States Department of Commerce as registered securities. These securities, each of which carries an estimated $1 million value, have been and still are circulated around the world as collateral for loans, entries on the asset, aside of ledgers, etc. Just like any other security, there's just one problem. We didn't authorize it. The United States is a direct, excuse me, the United States is a district of Columbia Corporation. In volume 20, Corpus Juris, section 1785, we find the United States government is a foreign corporation with respect to a state. See NY Merriam 36 NE 505 1441 S. .0, excuse me, S.O. 1973 14L edition 287. Since a corporation is a fictitious person, it cannot speak, see, touch, smell, etc. It cannot by itself function in the real world. It needs a conduit, a transmitting utility, a liaison, how do you say it, of some sort to connect the fictional person and the fictional world in which it exists to the real world. Living people exist in a real world, not in a fictional virtual world. But government does exist in a fictional world and can only deal directly with other fictional or virtual persons, agencies, states, etc. In order for a fictional person to deal with the real person, there must be a connection, liaison, and a go-between. This can be something as simple as a contract. When both persons, the real and the fictional, agree to the terms of the contract, there is a connection, intercourse, dealings. There is a communication, an exchange. There is business. But there is another way for fictional government to deal with the real man and woman through the use of a representative, liaison, and the go-between. Who is the go-between? The liaison that connects fictional government to the real men and women. It is a government-created shadow, a fictional man or woman with the same name as ours. This person was created by using our birth certificates as the MCO or manufacturer's certificate of origin and the state in which we were born as the port of entry. This gave fictional government a fictional person with whom to deal directly, and this person is the straw man. I think that's a great place to end right there. We're gonna continue. The straw man is all black everything. Taking notes, sharing information. Do your own diligence. Don't take my word for anything. We're just sharing information. Thanks for checking this out. All black everything. We're getting it in. Peace and love. Mm-mm-mm.